Welcome to part two of this coaching session with Mirai, where we're really exploring a deeper boundary setting and becoming more of a boundary architect, or being able to create the lines we need with others. And as we saw in the first part of the session, we explored the subtle way that Mirai is relating to her experience and how she's developed this higher capacity to observe, see patterns, make predictions. And it's this capacity that we all have, and we can really enhance it through practice and through therapy and reading up a lot on what's happening within us. And it was subtle to see how this way we observe ourselves and see patterns can actually be a way of crossing a line as well in ourselves and with others. And so we're going to see in this second part a deeper exploration of how this subtle way of relating to ourselves and our boundaries can show up, and how we can more skillfully navigate this when we're creating what we need in our relationships so they align with our deeper vision of how we want our connections to be. And so we'll pick this session up and see that underneath all the light, or alongside all the seeing all the subtle patterns, the trauma, survival, adaptations, all this complexity, there was a moment that just really impacted Mirai, and that's where she was approached and asked, or not. It was stated that something was wrong, and so the person who seemed to obviously care about her was pretty direct and stating that there's something wrong. Can you, what's going on? And what we explore is what was her real response to that, and that's where we'll see that she had a very clear response to that. And it can be difficult to be truthful about our responses to people when they are showing some kind of care or giving us attention in a certain way. And if we want the kind of relationships we want, even with someone who's willing to tell the truth with us and wants to come into our inner experience, what I've seen is if we can really let them know the way we need them to come in, or how we want to be treated if we're going to explore our experience, that leads to a lot more grounding in us and a lot more intimacy in the end. There can be a real danger in these transformational practices. We actually get skillful at entering into inner experience with another person, but we end up crossing a line for them indirectly. And just to emphasize, when I say crossing a line, like I've already mentioned, and this is the big realization, I think, around being in really aware of the boundaries in connection, is this line between our inner experience and what's really inside us. And we can only access the inner experience within us with presence, contemplation, embodiment, transcendent awareness, or awareness of awareness. And so I don't believe we can be an authority over our inner experience, in terms of we can tell others what is really going on in us, or that we definitely have the ultimate meaning of our experience. That I don't think we can have, and I think we're guarding our boundaries in the wrong way when we claim, even over ourselves, like that we know what's going on in us. Because it's clear for me, when we practice deeply, we are not, we don't know with certainty what's going on within us. Like, but we can, what we can create boundaries around is how our inner experience is approached, like how people question us, if there are any expectations on us, that we can create the conditions we need to go into that inner world, because that's where there's a lot of unknown, there's a lot of vulnerability. It often needs a lot of care, almost like going towards a small child or a wild animal or something. Like, we really need that attention, and often we need curiosity, and that's what we're going to see with Mirai as we explore more. We're going to see where her no is, and we're going to see this, like, we're going to actually turn really towards this way she can both witness her experience and then be kind of in, like, have a personal sense of self, or she calls it a subject and a witness. And she really feels how this subject, or I would say personal, is really in the body. It's really human, and then this witness is kind of expanded and out of the body and more connected to thinking. And we're going to get to really see the subtleties around this in this session. So you'll see as we go through, we'll explore that. And then we'll start to see, like, the intricacies of the dynamic with this other person. And as you'll see during the session, this is quite common. Like, when you first start to really look at these subtle boundaries that we need, they often seem complicated, and it seems like we're really being like almost picky about what words are said. But actually, I think at first, if you develop that awareness, once it's there, once you realize, like, how you can skillfully navigate the line in yourself, but then the line for the other, like, if you can really see where you're assuming something about their inner experience, or you're subtly demanding something of their inner experience, or you're making assumptions and not checking, or you allow others to subtly come into your inner experience. When you start seeing that clearly, it starts to get much more simple, and then it starts to make so much sense of why we get into the patterns we've been getting into, and why there's been so much kind of difficulty with certain people and certain triggers. And so we really go into the subtleties, and we see some counter defenses and ways of checking, like, what others really mean when they come close to us, and how that can get entangled, and how we can actually just clarify where our line is. And then at the end, we just go through, like, ways to do it more skillfully, and ways to hold and see, like, if we can become aware of when we're complexifying a situation and it's getting entangled, if we can wake up in that moment that, something's going on in the boundaries, often that is enough, like that waking up and coming into presence. And then we do look at some refinements of how Mirai can interact, create the lines she needs. So hope you enjoy the session, and definitely interested in subtleties you notice in the session. So feel free to add some comments, and hope you enjoy the exploration.
And that's also the reflection on this whole situation. Like, we haven't even talked about the boundary, and the boundary itself seems pretty straightforward. And that's also how it starts, the whole situation. Like, what happens is someone asked me today, is something wrong? And I'm like, I don't know what to do with this question, so I say, I'm checking my experience is nothing is wrong, and then a person comes again like, I think something is wrong. Tell me what is wrong. And I'm like noticing, oh, I seem to not understand what this question even means. And I imagine that's the witness already. It's like, what would it even mean that something is wrong? When is something wrong? How would I even know something is wrong? I don't actually feel something wrong. Maybe I should. And then I say, oh, I think I need your question to be more open about my experience. And that seems very straightforward to me to say that, but it triggers this whole thing in the other person then, and then in me, and yeah.
The the um well, the first part, what do you make of that question? What's wrong with you? Or is there something wrong? Better. Slightly.
What I make of that question?
Yeah.
It's similar to what I just described. Like, I think a part of me probably somewhere thinks there's something wrong with me feeling something.
You notice
Like
that a
all
lot.
the time. Yeah, like I have a lot of hypotheses. Like it's a lot of different levels. I can
And what,
vaguely feel
well,
somewhere in the body.
what about um, like as an experiment? I don't, and I'm not saying this as if there's this like definite method that works, but what I'm curious about is like just on a personal level, just like the most direct experience of that question. Like what's it like to receive that question?
I don't like it. I don't
How's
understand it.
how is it to say that?
I get a bit impatient. It's like I want to move on from here towards my more complex analysis of the situation.
Yeah, and I'm imagining there's going to be some potential insight there, and it just stands out to me now like there's actually it seems like there's quite a clear no there, and it's not clear yet what that means for the connection, but it seems clear you don't like the way this question um, maybe not even the way it's asked, just this question on its own, it just seems like it's hitting a no for you.
Yeah.
And how is it that if that's the truth, like how is that for you that there's this question and actually you don't want to answer that question, or you don't even want that kind of question?
Yeah, that feels like it's I feel strength and I feel energy coming into my system when I acknowledge it. So that's
Yeah.
also this contrast, like when I notice my boundaries and my guardian and I understand yeah, when I notice them, it feels like something clicks in and I get energy and I'm like, wow, it's so easy. And then I'm like, okay, that now I'm just gonna say it out loud. I don't like this question. I would like to get a different question. And then
Yeah,
this other world comes suddenly, like hits in, and everything gets complicated, and I don't know why.
right. So it seems like here on this line of like, okay, so someone's approaching you, and the thing you know is you don't like it, and then when you acknowledge that you're allowed to not like it, there's some
Yeah,
strength that comes in and clarity,
yeah,
and, and that seems different to when something comes in you're pretty sure you don't like it, but you're not sure what to do about it, and then there becomes like an exploration, kind of a very sophisticated exploration into what might be happening and what might be underneath what's happening that's creating that. And and maybe a hypothesis I might have is that when that starts to happen, that the boundary's already been crossed.
Yeah, I think I'm not fully understanding yet, because when I noticed this question came at me and I was like, oh, I don't like it. And then I say that still feels energizing. And then the other person responds with, not just like I'm expecting the other person to respond with, oh, okay, that makes sense. Or like something like that. And all that seems very straightforward to me, or like nourishing or energy giving. But then something happens where I see that the other person closes down or doesn't understand what my need is, or
Well, so
and then
so
then things become difficult, because then I'm like, okay, now I need to explain it, and then the hypothesis starts coming in.
okay. Well, so there's two things here. I think we can explore more like what this experience is of not liking, and maybe there's some more refinement there that might make it clearer for the other person what your response is to
Yeah,
their question. And then there's also what I noticed there is where your capacity to see the subtleties works on the other person. So it's like,
yeah,
oh yeah, I can see that they have a need, or I can see they feel triggered, or and so you start looking underneath what's happening in them,
yeah.
um, and then imagine then when you speak from that seeing, it gets even more kind of like tricky and um,
Yes and no, because I'm realizing as we speak right now, this is really the part that gets me through most conflicts. Like
right,
the conflicts that I have, I mean, or the tricky situations, especially in attachment, like when something becomes this spiral and it's an attachment with someone and both people are triggered, usually it seems really difficult until, and sometimes I only do this later, sometimes I start doing this immediately, until my witnessing comes in, analyzes the whole situation, what's happening both for me and for them, and then comes back into connection and says, this is what is happening. And then the other person says, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then conflict is gone.
right. So it sounds like there's a moment where this witnessing, what you're describing as the witnessing, you say kicks in. So it seems like there's some way it feels like more present.
Yeah.
And when you start speaking from there, you find the, the entanglement or the conflict starts to resolve.
Yeah, at least there's, if it has like a really good analysis, then it seems to click and resolve.
Right,
Before that, like the way until that analysis can be a bit weird, because it's really hard to actually ask the other person. Like I need to consciously remind myself that I need to ask, oh, what's happening for you? And not say, oh, what's it like to feel this and this and this, which I don't even know whether they are consciously feeling, because it's my
right.
hypothesis. So that seems to be a bit entangled before I get to the full analysis of what's happening.
It seems like when you're able to, yeah, use some of your capacities that really support kind of keeping the boundaries clear, like asking someone what it's like for them,
Yeah.
sharing what's in your experience, that starts to enhance this witnessing capacity where if it starts to become clearer and more present, that you can get a good meta map of what's going on, and that can support the situation.
Mm. Yeah.
How is it to see that?
And notice I'm mostly, I think that the witness is very active right now. And I noticed it by, I'm almost a bit lost in my thoughts. I'm looking up and I'm like speaking from like a higher level, and somehow that feels like, yeah, almost like I don't fully understand what you're saying. And I think the part that says I don't fully understand is actually the subjective experience.
And this seems a good point to explore this line that seems to be there for you between your personal experience, the subjective experience, and then this witnessing capacity. And it seems that's what you're experiencing now, where it seems like, oh, actually, maybe on the personal level, I'm not actually quite getting this. And then on this witnessing level, there's like, you're kind of in this, yeah, in the complex dance we're weaving.
Yeah, and this seems very similar to what happened for me during the last training with you. It's like the complexity, like the witness feels met in the complexity and plays a lot and feels satisfied. But the personal, or like a younger part of me, is like, I don't fully get it or something.
Is that still here now?
Yeah, somehow, yes.
Hmm. I get curious about it, how you're noticing it.
I notice confusion, like I'm not quite sure, like I sometimes not know which part I'm in.
That makes sense to me, because it's not yet clear to me this like what this witnessing is, and in relation to like your more personal experience. Yeah, it seems to have a different voice sometimes.
Yeah, I think the personal I feel more in the lower parts of my body. It's quite clear to me. And then the witnessing is like slightly out of my body.
I wonder if the or what happens in me when I hear it is I want to like share some more direct things with you that I've heard that might be clarifying on the personal level, just around
Mm.
what I've heard about the boundary,
Yeah.
and seeing that with the disruption we had at the beginning. I think we've got like 10 minutes. So it
Yeah.
might be good to yeah, look at that. Because the thing I hear with the question, what's wrong? It's actually to ask someone what's wrong, especially if you've not directly shared anything that would suggest that something's wrong. They're obviously looking kind of underneath at you.
Yeah.
So there's already a suggestion that there's something more going on than what you've actually shared. So there's no wonder that you're a bit like, hang on a second. You've already assumed something about my experience that I'm not, I haven't shared. And so there's a line there of like, in that moment, do you even want them to like come in and make assessments about your experience? You might do, but even with your most trusted practice partners, I still imagine there's quite a lot of time actually that you don't want to be suddenly like approached like what's underneath, or at least you're given the clear invitation. And then the response to this is important though, because there's also, if you respond in a similar way, or you assume something about them, or there's a judgment in what you're sharing, that's going to be difficult for them to handle as well. It will be up to whoever manages to find the boundary first that can start to steer the conversation back to presence. That was a bit complex. I want to simplify again. So it seems like when you're asked a question like that, like what's wrong, the thing it seems you're saying no to is like you want to be at least invited into, and you said this, I want it to be more open. I think what you're sharing there is like, if you're wanting to explore my experience with me, I really want to feel invited, or I don't want anything assumed might be going on in me. And I think even though it's quite clear when you say I didn't like it, not liking something is just it is actually a judgment of what's happening. It's like something's happening and I don't like it, so it's not as accurate as like, oh, I feel tense, or I feel some pain, or I feel a sense of distancing. That would be even more clear what you're experiencing.
It would feel like if I focused on my body, I would actually go into the witnessing.
Yeah,
So
what do you see
when
there?
then I would go into like, oh, like I'm like intentionally moving my focus from the very personal, like almost like child. It's just like, no, I don't like it. And I would make an effort to say, oh, yeah, I'm noticing. And I think I did that here. It's like, oh, I'm noticing. I want a more open
Right.
question.
And what is there a communication from the child, like before the judgment of like, I don't like this, or is that, does that feel like the most direct?
No, I think there's something in my chest. Yeah, there's contraction in my chest.
In terms of this interaction and this person in this moment, what's it like imagining sharing this? Like, does it feel like that would actually be too fast for you?
To share that there's contraction.
Yeah.
It does have a hint, I think, of, oh, I'm allowing them quite deep in.
Yeah.
Not quite deep, but I'm allowing them more like deeper in than we have been until now. And I would like to almost like like if I really listen to my system, I would like to let them know a little bit, I think, but now I'm thinking about it. It's like I don't know how to know this. A part of me is like, yeah, sure, we can just go all the way in. But another part is like, I think like something in my system feels like it would like to at least let them know to slow down, or like now we're going deeper in, or some kind of warning, or
Yeah, and I like hearing this because I mean, in my world, it was it's so easy to or because there's so much to explore and it can be so enjoyable and meaningful to explore. But sometimes I think that we can override actually whether we genuinely want to go deeper or we feel really invited to go deeper. And actually, I don't think we end up going deeper really if the lines aren't really clear for us. So if someone's come in, even if it's not the worst, it's not the worst line cross you could say, someone saying, "Oh, what's wrong?" But that's where common kind of language and common ways of speaking sometimes are still boundary issues, and so it does make sense that there's this deeper thing we've seen that personally it's actually creating contraction in you, and that's actually quite deep. Like when you share it with me now, I really feel like more intimacy with you, and it feels like our context is like given us enough time to experience that together. But even now I'm really careful, like I want to go at your speed here.
yeah, and I start to question this sometimes. It seems like I don't know what's best to do here, because the feedback I get is that people then, when I set my boundaries, feel like they need to be super careful around
Yeah,
me.
so
And then I'm like, I don't know, is it then good to have boundaries or not? Or
I think
am I asking for too much attunement?
so it feels like you're taking important steps and you are holding a higher bar for how people relate with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a higher bar. Like not many people, interact with someone and say something like, "What's wrong?" and the other one can sense there's a subtle line cross there into their inner world. That's quite an advanced capacity. And but it's actually also a simple capacity that um, actually it, yeah, people assuming stuff about you never feels good to anyone, actually. I went in my imagination at least.
Yeah.
But then the the clarity of the the boundary, it still feels like there's a bit more refinement possible that would make it easier in those moments for you and then for the other to kind of understand what you're saying to them.
Yeah.
Because even the need that I need you to be more open is actually it's like a request for them to be different.
Yeah.
But it seems close, like you're getting closer to what seemed like the need, like it was like, oh, if you want to kind of explore my experience with me, actually need to feel invited, or or I need a sense of openness, or or that it's yeah a sense of being yeah. Well, I think those would make sense, but I think it's best you find your own words there. But
Yeah. I'm with the curiosity because I intentionally think I said I wanted more open question, because it's almost like that's the most objective or something, where like I would be scared of if I say I want more of a sense of openness, that I'm saying that the other person isn't open.
yeah, um, in that, it's an interesting, and this is also where one thing that can actually, where you can stand on the line with someone, especially if it at first isn't so charged, is just simply be like, oh, you're imagining that something's wrong, or are you imagining something's wrong, or oh, are you wanting to support me right now, so it's just because when you're asking, like when someone's asking something of you and you ask back, like, what is it you would like to know, or you seem interested in what's happening underneath for me, or you're actually standing on the line and making sure you're checking what's coming in, but you don't need to be like that. Can be quite relaxed, because it's very easy for us to misunderstand, and it's likely, if someone cares about if something's wrong or not, that there is something that there's high potential that they do want to be a support to you, or
I think
and
at that state I already did not trust any of this. Like at that state I even didn't want to put my boundary actually down, I think, in reality.
what did you want?
I think I wanted the person to be curious with me, but the first thing I said was actually just no, nothing is wrong. And then they kept asking, and then I was like, well, is something wrong for you? I did ask that back, but it's like revealing the contraction. Yeah, it's not. I felt really protective, I think, in that moment.
Right. So it seems like all the intelligence was there from your personal experience, and it seems like it's not an easy navigation, especially in real time.
Yeah.
And even no, nothing's wrong. The interesting thing about that is you actually have to also know like your whole inner experience to make that judgment.
Mm.
And it does sound like a little bit of a counter defense, and and I just want to share, like, I know this seems like very well, I don't know if imagine it's like, cool, this is quite subtle, and but my sense is once you do find the line in these tricky situations, it might seem like a high standard in the moment, but actually it becomes much easier. Like once the path is clear.
Yeah.
So it just sounds like that very first question was, quite a big no for you. And maybe that was, I'm not okay with this question.
Yeah. I'm just noticing, and we're also now coming to an end, but I'm still noticing like the lower, like the more subjective part of the child, and it's like, and I still don't know how to, like I seem to be able to say it in the moment, but it just leads to entanglement or something. So that part is still active.
Yeah. So if you imagine saying like I'm not okay with this question, you imagine there being some entanglement.
I don't imagine it, I experience it. Like yesterday, today, like throughout this course, whenever I try to set a boundary, it often leads to some entanglement.
Yeah. That's not surprising. This especially when it like when it's someone close.
Yeah.
There's quite a lot of there's often ways we've been relating that kind of well established, so changing the pathways is not so easy in the beginning, and it can be a little bit of a wrestle sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening.
And especially if the person you're interacting with, which is probably the case, knows that you've been training in this area. They're going to also be super alert to being maybe concerned of being outmaneuvered or something.
Yeah, and I think I would like to hear more about that next time, because that seems to be very true. Yeah.
And well, my sense is from our first call that there's actually already quite a few things that I imagine are going to be supportive for you in these situations. And one is this having this clearer distinction between like where the guardian lives, like between your personal experience and then what's unconscious, and then this more witnessing capacity. And so when you're really in your guardian, it's usually just simple, like when you were sharing today, like, oh yeah, I don't like it, or oh, it was already a no for me, and oh yeah, I don't quite understand. Like it's, and when we're operating from there with even our like advanced practitioner friends and loved ones, so nourishing to be in alignment with that. And then what you see, like in our exploration, as soon as like what you share with me, I hear it and reflect it back to you, you then, it seems like what happens is your guardian just allows more of your unconscious to become conscious, and you just share it very easily. So you don't have to go looking for it, it just comes. And that's kind of the magic of honoring the guardian, is that he will just reveal what we're ready to kind of really meet. And then the same with others. So having that line clearer is, I imagine, will be helpful, and seeing the times where when it starts getting really complicated, it's like, oh yeah, what's actually just happened on the personal level, right? That kind of preceded this kind of more complex stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do sometimes have the experience of when I manage to stay on the line, then it just seems clearer and clearer.
Yeah, and then it's also, you'll know, because like when you're in a situation like this and you're feeling relaxed or connected, this complexity is a lot of fun for you, I imagine, and meaningful. When you're feeling a bit stressed, I can imagine it's not quite the same, and has that entangled like quality.
Yeah, it's a very clear contrast.
And then the last thing of practice is just if it doesn't land well, first of all, it's like seeing if you can stay on the personal, because it's like as soon as you're like, oh, I think they're triggered, or I might be in my attachment thing, as soon as you go there, you're going into the difficult territory, the complex territory. And if it hasn't landed well, it's highly likely there was just a slight refinement needed for you to be accurate about what your personal experience was, and not assuming or going over the line for them. And in a way, we actually have to just discover the most simple communication. That's the hard part, actually. It's the finding what's simple, because it's easier to hypothesize and
And that resonates strongly.
So are there any last questions then, and does that feel like a clear path to explore?
Yeah, it does feel clear.
And And I wonder if, as we go through, whether the exploration will, in a way, simplify, or whether this is just a place we can resonate, like there are, it's a place where we can explore the complex layers. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a way it simplifies more.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either. Yeah.
Oh, we'll see. And
Yeah.
yeah, good beginning.
Yeah, thank you a lot.